And welcome back to Bengal Bites, a podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from a real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 130. This is the reaction to everything that's been going on, but the biggest news of all, the Bengals traded for Dexter Lawrence. That's right. Turn all your mock drafts upside down, throw them out. They don't matter anymore. All the things that everybody's been talking about in the media for the past month about what the Bengals are going to do at number 10 in the draft doesn't matter anymore because the Bengals traded that pick away in a very un-Bengals move. I definitely didn't see this coming. A lot of people didn't see this one coming. It's not something the Bengals have really ever done. But we'll talk about the significance of this move, what it's going to mean for this team, for the player. We're also going to cover all of the Bengals transactions that have happened since the last episode, which was all the way back at the beginning of March. So right after free agency kicked off, Bengals signed Boye Mafe, and they signed Brian Cook, the safety from the Chiefs. And then it was kind of a little bit of a slow period. It seemed like it was quiet on the Bengals front. Not a lot was going on. And I figured they were just going to go into the draft nice and quiet, no headlines. And then out of nowhere, Bengals stun everybody. So we're going to cover all the things that have happened, some comings and goings, new players. Some players are leaving the team. Some players are leaving the NFL completely. It's going to be an interesting time. But let's cut to the chase. Dexter Lawrence. He had been a two-time All-Pro player, three-time Pro Bowler. He was on a Aaron Donald-like tear back 2 seasons prior to this upcoming one. So not 2025, but the 2024 season. Dexter Lawrence had like 9.5 sacks through 12 games, then suffered a dislocated elbow, or he got his elbow bent backwards. Very painful, and took him out for the rest of the season, and he had to wear an elbow brace last year. And there were questions about how much that injury affected him last year, coming off that injury. Unlike the previous season where he was on a record-breaking pace, this last season, he played 17 games. He played over 700 snaps, but only had half of a sack, not even a full sack for Dexter Lawrence. Now, he's a nose tackle. His main thing is taking up 2 blockers and being a good run defender. He's 340, 350 pounds, immovable object, strong. There's not a lot of players like him in the NFL. And this is going to have a big impact on the Bengals, what they choose to do defensively. They've been missing this type of player ever since DJ Reader left. When the Bengals were going to those AFC championships and Super Bowls, they had DJ Reader plugging up the defense up front. That's the point of attack. That's where everything starts. And ever since DJ Reader left to go to the Lions, the Bengals defense up front, specifically at the defensive tackle position, has been very mediocre at best. And the reason that I continue to not listen to anything that head coach Zach Taylor or de facto general manager Duke Tobin have had to say since the season ended is because they're always going on and on about how much they believe in McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins, their 2 draft picks from 2 seasons ago that haven't really materialized into much of anything. They're going on and on and on about how great they're going to be, and then they went out and signed other players who are going to come in and maybe replace them, not only in the starting lineup, but maybe on the roster completely. So you can never really put any stock into what Zach Taylor and Duke Tobin and any of these coaches say, especially in the off season, because there's no games going on. The only games is this gamesmanship between teams trying to figure a way to not divulge what their plans are going into this draft. And obviously, the Bengals didn't want to give away the fact that they were in the market for Dexter Lawrence. I did not believe the Bengals would be in the market for Dexter Lawrence because the rumors going around put out by players' agents are, that Dexter Lawrence was looking for a trade. He wanted to be traded. He didn't want to play for the Giants anymore. But how many times have we heard this? Especially the Bengals went through this with Trey Hendrickson multiple times. And so you say, oh, a player wants a trade. That just means they want more money. And that is true. Dexter Lawrence is getting more money. That's why he's coming to the Bengals. But he's also getting out of New York. And I'm sure it was just a financially motivated decision. I don't know the backstory there. He doesn't sound like he has any ill will or animosity towards anyone on the Giants organizationally. The ownership, the coaching staff, or I guess the coaches all got fired. But it sounds mostly like a financial decision. But it's so funny when all these reporters ask any new free agent that comes into the Bengals to say, "Oh, why are you so excited to play for the Bengals? What drew you to Cincinnati?" Like they just, I had a vision that I was supposed to play for the Bengals. No, it's obviously money. They're like, I came here because the Bengals were the ones who offered me the most money. It really comes down to that. So they were asking Dexter Lawrence, like, when did he find out about it? And the trade happened on Saturday. He said he found out about it on Saturday. He didn't know anything about Cincinnati. He'd never been to Cincinnati. He is friends with BJ Hill. Apparently I don't think they went to, did they both go to Clemson? I can't remember where BJ Hill went to. No, he went to the same school with Jermaine Pratt in, Coastal Carolina? I can't remember. Was it Jermaine Pratt of South Carolina? They're in the Carolina somewhere. Anyway, BJ Hill and Dexter Lawrence are friends. That's great. But Dexter Lawrence didn't know anything about the Bengals and he said, oh, I want to play with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all these great players we have and all these great coaches and yada, yada, yada. He's just coming here for the extra, $10 million that the Bengals agreed to pay him. And the Bengals definitely needed a player like Dexter Lawrence. Like I said, ever since DJ Reader, it's been all downhill for the Bengals defensively. They've been just the worst team in the NFL defensively, especially against the run. They could not stop any runs. Teams would just run all over them. The Jets last year, the Bears last year. Kyle Monangai, like a 7th-round pick, running for over 150 yards on the Bengals defense. Breece Hall and like the Jets, just everybody on the Jets having like long runs, just making the Bengals look foolish. So this is definitely part of that defensive overhaul. And they also, like I said, they got Boye Mafe, they got Brian Cook, the safety. They also signed Jonathan Allen, defensive tackle, who was released by the Minnesota Vikings 1 year into a 3-year contract, which is never a good sign. If a team signs a guy to a multiple-year contract and then cut him after one season, the play was a little bit declining, but hopefully he's got a little bit of juice left that the Bengals can squeeze out of him, metaphorically speaking, of course. And they're still probably going to look to pick up some more defensive players in the draft. But now that whole conversation of who should the Bengals were apparently not impressed enough or didn't think that the player that was going to be there when the 10th overall pick shows up on the draft this coming Thursday, they don't think that they're going to be as good or as valuable as Dexter Lawrence might be in the next 3 or 4 years. Now, Dexter Lawrence is currently 28 years old, going to be 29 during the season. And so he's obviously not as young as some of these 21, 22-year-old guys who are coming out of the draft, and he's much more expensive. Like we said, he's getting paid, I think, $28 million this year, and he's still under contract for a couple more seasons after that. So he's going to be much more expensive, even for the number 10 overall pick, which is a high draft pick, which gets slotted into many millions of dollars, no doubt, but not anywhere near the close to $30 million that Dexter Lawrence is going to get. So the Bengals are giving up that opportunity to have a potentially very talented player. It could be a future Hall of Fame player at a very low price. And the Bengals don't typically make moves like that. I knew Dexter Lawrence was out there on the market, and people were saying, oh, the Bengals should make this trade. But in the back of my mind, I just thought, there's no way the Bengals would do this. This is not a Bengals move, especially not trading away a first-round draft pick. Maybe the Bengals would trade down to get more picks. I could see something like that, but I never thought the Bengals would trade for an older, more expensive player. But there was that missing piece in the defensive line. So I get it. It makes sense why they would do it. Just the value is kind of steep, but it's way too early to say, oh, well, this is a great decision. They won the trade. Oh, let's grade it. Let's give it an A through F or whatever. We don't know at this point. It's all speculation. They haven't, they're not going to play another, I can't do the math, 5 months at this point. September. Let's just say September. So it's going to be a while before we even have any idea whether this was a good, wise decision by the Bengals. And we don't even know what's going to happen in Thursday's draft. Who would have been there at number 10? Who's going to be there? Who would the Giants take? What do the Giants do with it? The Giants now have the 5th overall pick and number 10. They may decide to trade the 10th pick, or who knows what's going to happen. But this is a big move. This was the first time. There's so many firsts in this. I think it was the first time that the Bengals have traded away a first-round draft pick since 1989, and it's the first round the Bengals have traded away a top 10 draft pick in the Super Bowl era. And since the Bengals have existed, it's because the Bengals came into existence in 1968. So the Bengals have never traded away a pick this high in the draft. They're always the ones, getting the picks, not trading them away. And that's Mike Brown's philosophy, is he doesn't want to make other teams better. But I guess in this circumstance, they believe that by trading away this 10th pick that may or may not be a good player, and they feel like Dexter Lawrence is more of a sure thing. He's got the 3 Pro Bowls. He's got the 2 All-Pros. Maybe he was just a little bit, whatever with the injury or whatever happened last year. When they asked him why his stats were a little bit down, he just said that offensive lines had gotten smarter, and he kind of he made it seem like they figured out some kind of tricks to stopping him. But it seems kind of like a big coincidence that all of the offensive lines would have gotten smarter that he faced last season in all 17 games. Would seem more likely that maybe he got a little bit older and slower, but hopefully that's not the case. But speaking of getting old and slow, Orlando Brown Jr., I was saying the Bengals, in the last episode, I was saying the Bengals could save a lot of money by releasing Orlando Brown. They did exactly the opposite. The day after I put out that podcast, they signed Orlando Brown to a 2-year contract extension through the 2028 season. And he was saying that he negotiated the contract himself, which is good and maybe not good, because he's getting paid the same amount all 3 seasons, the same amount that he's getting paid this season, which you could argue is maybe a little bit too much, but the salary cap goes up every year. It's over $300 million at this point, and so every year that he gets paid the same, he's effectively getting paid less. So by the time 2028 rolls around, if he's even still on the team, he will be getting paid towards the bottom of the offensive tackle market. So hypothetically, it's a good deal as long as Orlando Brown Jr. continues to stay at the same rough level of play and his play doesn't, deteriorate extremely in the next couple of years, and that his body is able to hold up, because he did have a few games missed a couple seasons ago with that knee lower leg injury. So I know Orlando Brown Jr. does not grow on trees. There's not 6'8", 350 guys walking around out there. But I wouldn't be opposed to drafting a tackle. They need some kind of more depth along that offensive line. They let go of center Matt Lee, former 7th round pick out of Miami. Never really got much of an opportunity to play, was injured, and he was kind of undersized at that. So surprising that they did it before the draft, but like a month into free agency, instead of letting Matt Lee have a chance to maybe catch on with another team earlier into this process. We don't know, maybe something happened, maybe he had an injury that he was not rehabbing well, I don't know, but Matt Lee didn't work out, so they don't really have a backup center because, what's his face? Trey Hill, they drafted him a few years ago and then got rid of him because he never turned out. So they really need some kind of backup behind Ted Karras, who's 32, 33 years old at this point. We don't know how much longer he's going to be able to play. And Dalton Reisner, they re-signed, but they need some more help at guard because Lucas Patrick, who didn't even make it past half of a game last year, but Lucas Patrick was on the roster. He signed with the Giants, I believe. And then Cordell Volson, who was on injured reserve all of last season with a shoulder injury, he signed with the Tennessee Titans. So they need some guards, they need a backup center, and I wouldn't be opposed to getting a backup tackle because Orlando Brown Jr., I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play well. He may be released sooner rather than later. But one of the other big moves that the Bengals did was re-sign Joe Flacco at backup quarterback. And I was actually surprised about this one, honestly, because I figured that at least some team was going to give Joe Flacco a chance to be a starting QB. But the Las Vegas Raiders signed Kirk Cousins instead of Joe Flacco. I don't know if he was in the conversation there, but Joe Flacco apparently didn't get the opportunity that he was looking for. But on the other hand, let me double check Joe Flacco's contract because it was more than I was expecting. Oh yeah, Joe Flacco signed a 1-year, $6 million contract with the Bengals. 41 years old. That is a lot of money to pay a backup quarterback $6 million. So good work if you can get it for Joe Flacco. But that's, I don't know how many Samaje Perine worth of contract. Samaje Perine is getting $1.3, $1.4 million or something like that. So Joe Flacco is making more money than multiple players on the Bengals roster, and he's like an insurance policy. They hope that he never has to play. They hope that Joe Burrow makes it healthy all the way through the season. The Bengals also signed Josh Johnson, who has been on every team in the NFL almost at this point, and they're going to have a full quarterback room of old dudes. They got Sean Clifford on the roster as well as a camp body. Maybe he can make it through to the practice squad. We'll see. But Bengals also signed Kyle Duggar, safety, and Jasir Taylor to 1-year contracts at the beginning of April. And then one of the players who was leaving, Logan Wilson, retired. Logan Wilson got traded in the middle of last season to the Dallas Cowboys, which was a great move in hindsight by the Bengals. They knew that the end was coming for Logan Wilson. got something for him in the way of a low round draft pick. I think they got a 7th for Logan Wilson. So not, huge, but at least they got something. But Logan Wilson retired. I'm not totally surprised. He looked, even in preseason last year, he looked slow. But the coaches were talking about how great Logan Wilson looked. Al Golden was going on and on about how he looked so much better than last year. And last year you could really tell he was affected by this knee injury that he had surgery on in the offseason. But that surgery apparently did not help Logan get fully back to 100%. Who knows? But unfortunately, I don't want to make accusations, but it seemed like Logan Wilson got that big contract and then the play kind of immediately declined. He built a new house out in Wyoming, and his wife had at least one kid. Maybe he got more in the way, but he's kind of seemed like he's transitioning into the I've made a bunch of money and now let me just live out in Wyoming and be a family man. So good luck to Logan Wilson, but the end came quickly for him. A career that did not last as long as we had hoped. But Dexter Lawrence is probably like the same age as Logan Wilson. So hopefully Dexter Lawrence stays healthy and is able to be a contributor for the Bengals for multiple seasons, because they gave up so much to get him. And if it works out, it will be a great move. As a Bengals fan, there's a part of me that's like, oh, there's no way this is going to work. It can't work because it's the Bengals and nothing good can ever happen to the Bengals. So there's going to be some way they're going to manage to screw this up. Something's going to go wrong. It won't work out, but maybe it will. I'm going to try to keep an open mind and be optimistic and give the Bengals and Dexter Lawrence the benefit of the doubt. And hopefully this Bengals defense looks completely changed from last year. They're going to have an almost entirely new defensive line, and we'll have to see what number Shamar Stewart wears, because Dexter Lawrence was number 97 his entire career. It's not like Shamar Stewart did anything so amazing that a bunch of people have his jersey, or he, is like has an iconic number 97 moment. So he shouldn't be opposed to switching to something else. But the draft is coming up this week. We'll have an episode after that to kind of recap what happened. But a little bit of the luster and the excitement is taken out because the Bengals don't have that top 10 pick anymore. But they're still going to have some new players, some new guys to get excited about joining the roster. But it won't be quite as exciting. But this is the excitement. Dexter Lawrence, this is enough excitement to carry the Bengals in the conversation for at least a few days, maybe 1.5 days, realistically, until the draft. So I'm trying to think, is there anything else we needed to cover Bengals-wise? The Steelers are still trying to figure out if Aaron Rodgers is coming back to be their quarterback. They could draft one, but they're at 21st in the draft, so it's kind of low to draft a quarterback. Ravens, as we know, got Trey Hendrickson. They lost Tyler Linderbaum, their starting center, so they gained a Trey Hendrickson, and they also kept their 2 first-round draft picks instead of trading for Max Crosby from the Raiders. As far as we know, Max Crosby is going to stay with the Raiders and go back there and play this season. He hasn't gotten retraded yet. The Browns, they're still the Browns. They're probably going to be terrible again this year. There's some rumors going around that Myles Garrett could be traded. He got his contract kind of restructured so that he's not going to get paid until later in the year or something like that. I don't know. So we'll see if Myles Garrett gets traded out of the AFC North. That would be good for Joe Burrow and the Bengals. I would love to see the Browns not have the best defensive player in the league. But I think that about does it for this episode. So thank you so much for listening. We'll be back after the draft to recap all the new players that the Bengals are going to have. So until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hooday and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.